Good day, Tamers. Welcome back to Deck Profiles with Get Swiftly. If you're new here, welcome. If you know me, as it's probably like the biggest video on my channel, I am that guy that for a year has been talking about how good this deck is. And to be fair, it's very good at annoying people. It's very good at getting wins where it shouldn't be winning. But at no point is it a good deck. It's just very fun, it's annoying, and I like it. So, I'm going to start off with something a bit different here. I'm going to play 4 of the Gigis. The reason I play 4 Gigis, I'm going to win another one, don't you worry, guys. Being able to get the extra 1000 DP in does hit a lot of Digimon. People are kind of surprised, just like, oh, you know, why do you want to have like 4,000 like DP reduction or 6,000 DP reduction or 8,000? Like, because that's generally where your standard marks are. You know, a lot of X-antibody Digimon, they're like 6,000 or 8,000 or 12,000. So it's always the extra 1,000 DP that people get surprised by. It does come into circumstance occasionally, but I quite like having the extra. You don't really need the draw power in this deck, and you don't really need to have like the DP in this deck, because you're not really caring about punching over things, you're just caring about getting rid of things or filling the decks. Then we're going to play 2 of the Gilmans that searches Tamers. Massively not too important in this deck, because if you mill your Tamers, you can get them back with other effects. Don't worry about it too much. But if you do need to do something, you have the chance of finding a Tamer. Again, not massively important. Sometimes it's okay to have it for the DP increase. But again, it's not massively important. It's not the main thing in this deck. It's just an extra body with a name. Now, this deck is always going to be awkward because it's a Gilmans deck. We do run 4 of the new EX4 Gilmans with Rush. Now, what you're thinking here is like, oh, it's not very good. You get to 20 trash over both people's trashes very quickly in this deck. Your main source of getting stuff into your trash is your first stack. You start at 20. You get 10 of yours and 10 of your opponents. I don't know what to tell you. Like, it's good. It comes up, and if you have the memory set to tamer out, you get free memory. You go, okay, there's enough trash there, I swing. And you'll chip games away because your opponent can't deal with the fact that you constantly can swing for the ease of it. And you'll see how easy it is to get it back into your hand, like as we go through this stuff. So we do have the EX2 Gilmans. It's your only real searcher in the deck. To be fair, though, could you have another one? At the same time, it's a really good card, and I hate the alt art for this in EX2. If we could get like any other alt art Bandai, I'd be very interested. And I'd throw a lot of money at you. But yeah, it searches for a tamer, and it searches for a name, so a growl or a gallant, which is really good, which means it actually searches for everything in this deck, because everything is either considered as or is named in this deck. But no, it's really good. You play 4 of these because the searches are good, and so technically the only searches you have in this deck anyway. We play 2 of the Growlmons. You can play this early if you really want to. It's actually pretty good if your opponent does have good tamer removal and you just need to get something down later in the game. Just run these at 2. I don't think these are actually that good in like a normal deck. I think you still only want to run 2 of these, because even though it's great to have the ability to get your stuff out early, I do think these are the ones that are going to actually cause some chaos and issues, especially early game if you can get them out super early. Especially if you go second and your opponent gives you like free memory, so you go, okay, play a searcher and then play this, then go into throw a Takata down on the field, and you've already spent 2 memory on their turn. But no, it's pretty good. I'm going to play 4 of the Black Growlmons. Now you might be thinking, why are these? Trust me, milling your opponent out and gaining resources because you milled your opponent out is such a good technique in this game that it does feel bad for your opponent, especially when you just mill them to nothingness. Obviously, you have a massively bad matchup into Gilmans, because obviously you're helping them, and there's quite a few times where you just mill their good stuff, and it's like, oh, just they gain all this memory, you can't do anything anymore. But no, it's a good card. Being able to mill 2 and then bring back a named card is really good. So for those who didn't see, it is, let's try and get the light off here. Trash top 2 cards of both players' decks, and then you may return 1 Gilmans, or a card with Gal or Gallant in its name from the trash. Again, everything that isn't a tamer in this deck, or option card, is considered one of those things. I'm going to play the old EX3 Crown. Again, this deck is just for milling. There's no real interest in here. Occasionally, if you swing with like your first stack and it doesn't die, you can pop it with this to get another Spirit Attack extra +1. It's very good. Again, play 4 with this one. You might see like it's a bit of a weird ratio thing, but having the extra security attack +1 is fairly good. On deletion, this should be the Undigivolve. I've been trying to hunt down the replacements for this with the RP pack, because they're all the same rarity and they're all non-foil, but I can't find them because no one's either selling them or no one's trying to get rid of them in the country, even though it's because they're worthless, that's why. But no, Undigivolving, delete one of your opponent's Digimon with 3000 DP or less, although normally in this case it's 4000 DP or less. And then if no Digimon was deleted by this effect, both players trash such cards to the deck. You cannot delete instinct because 9 times out of 10 you're going against an opponent that's got a level 4 out and you can't pop them. You do just get to mill 2 cards, and milling 2 cards is just as good as popping something with this deck. Because unless you got the Takatas out to gain like memory from it, you don't really gain any advantage. We do play 4 of the EX3 Wall Ground ones. I think you play these anyway because there's such a good card that it makes no sense not to play these. We do get an upgrade in these in the Regional Cup as of August and September, so I am looking forward to upgrading these into foil, and I don't care the participation of the finalist of the champion. I just want to move foil because they're a good card and I think they're really good, and I think we need to see better care for our Growl and Gallant Man stuff. But no, for those who don't know, both players will trash the top 3 cards of their decks, and then if you have 5 more cards in either player, so if your opponent's got 5 or you've got 5, generally because you've milled 2 from them and you've milled 2 from yourself, and you're going to mill 3 more from them, somebody's going to have 5. And if you do, you may play a Takata or a Gilmans from your hand or trash without paying the cost. Again, because you're milling in this deck, it's not so bad because you do get a chance to bring it out. If it's still your turn and you milled a rush one, you can swing with a rush one if you want to, and if it's a 5s, if the last Grand one we saw is in the sources, you can pop it to make that gain a security attack +1, which is a quite good early game, especially if you get through 3 security on one turn. Your opponent will be very shocked and they start panicking quite quickly. The new Black Wall Ground one from EX4. I like this. It's fairly good. I think it's got interesting direction, and this is kind of where we had the whole, as we saw earlier. You want to have this down. Its sources, you get into pop swing a little bit bigger then. And then when Digivolving, trash top 3 cards of both players' decks, and then choose any number of your opponent's Digimon so that the DP total adds up to 3000 and delete it. Every 10 cards conclusively, so in either player, so if I've got 8, they've got 12, that's 20, increase the total by 2000. So you go 3 to 5 to 7 to 9 to 11. I mean, you can go, I think you can go to like 13, but it's obviously very late game, and it's just a case of like who's going to like deck themselves out. With the baby in this deck, you do get to have that going from 4 to 6 to 8 to 10, and that's normally where you're actually going to start popping some of the bigger things, especially things like X antibodies, and so it makes them having to remove sources, and because they remove sources, you get to pop them in different ways. So a lot of people do have that kind of weird exception of like, I don't understand why you're trying to pop things that have protection, because they very rarely they have double or triple protection, so they generally will pop themselves to be a fantastically poor time. We do run 2 of the Chaos Gallant ones. The amount of times these are in security or you mill them, it's fantastic, and your opponent just doesn't understand why you do this. And that's because trash effect, end of your turn, by deleting one of your Digimon with a Digivolution card and a Gallant Man in name, you may play this card without paying its cost. You can pop the Megidramons. It's classed as a Chaos Gallant Man. It has Gallant Man in its name. You can pop this and you get to have so much, just so much fun. It's ridiculous. On play, delete one of your opponent's Digimon with 7000 DP or less. For every 10 cards, you gain the extra 2000. Now, generally, because you're playing this from the trash rather than from your hand, don't normally gain the additional effect from the Gigi, but popping a 7 or popping a 9 or an 11 or a 13 or a 15, especially like mid-game, it's devastating for opponents, especially if they've got no sources available to protect them. We're going to run 2 of these because you will get them into the trash quite early on. Then we play 4 of the beautiful Megidramons. Now, if you've been watching the channel for a while, you know how much I love this card. It's just not been good in anything until now. But this card is treated as a Chaos Gallant Man, which means it's searchable in this deck, and it classes as a Gallant name. When Digivolving, delete one of your opponent's Digimon with 10,000 DP or less. Now, because you generally will have the baby in the sources, it will be 11,000 or less. Most 6s aren't popped by this, so you generally will go for the second effect. Or, if they stop it from deleting by a source, if they stop this being deleted from a protection effect, then you will get your mill, which is what you normally want. If no Digimon is deleted by this, you will trash the top 5 cards of both players' decks. Milling your opponent for like 10 to 15 to 20 on like in 4 turns. Most opponents just don't know what to do because it's like, do I start swinging with the babies? You don't have blocker. This deck is one of those weird decks that should have blocker because, you know, Gallant Man has a giant ass shield. But because you're constantly burning all their stuff before they can do anything with it, they don't know what to do. On deletion, you may play 1 Gilmon and 1 Takata from your hand or trash without paying the memory cost. Because you get to do both, like there are players here where you can pop this, go into the effect of like Analog Youth, where like you can go back to 0, and then you'll have the Rush and you'll have the Takata. In later games, such as like next format when we have the Rushing Gallant Man, you can like do different things. It's not so bad, but the idea is all the same. Where you're just trying to like get stuff for free, get them on the field, and just keep churning over and like beating your opponent up. I quite like it. I do think there are different things you can do in this deck, and I do like different ways that this deck can work and still do like the same sort of like core of just ruining your opponent's day, which, you know, good for me, not so good for you. Playing 2 of the Chaos modes. Now, you can change this out for a Blast mode if you really want to. There are games where it will come up where you're chipping away, but you don't necessarily need to have this to finish the game. You just need like that one extra unsuspended swing. Because you aren't running X antibody in this deck, because you're not a Gallant Man, you're a Gallant Man name, you don't get the effects of the Gallant Man X, which can make things kind of awkward at times. But 9 times out of 10, because you've got your opponent to 20 trash quite early on, and you will be quite early on, there's a few times where you will go Chaos at the end of your turn, pop your stuff, destroy something of theirs, play a Takata, play a Gilmon, and then if they can't get rid of your Chaos on the board, they will go. You can just go into this at the end of turn, blitz, and go, alright, game. And they can't stop you, because there's very few things in this deck that says, well, in the meta currently, it says like just stop your opponent from playing the game. We run 2 of these. Now, these are literally here because they are names, not because they're specifically good in this deck. They're a memory setter. You can play them for free. You can find them. You can mill them. You can do what you want with them. And that's okay. And that's literally what this deck is, really. It's essentially like you want your names work. And that's all this card does for this deck. There's no Gallant Man in this deck that you can, abuse, essentially. Now, we do run 4 of the Takatos from EX2. Now, originally, you used to play 3, which is why I have 3 Autarts. But yeah, you do play 4 of these. Card is fantastic. If you get a chance to get, like, what is it normally? If you get a chance to get 2 of these out before you get to your Megidra and you pop anything with Megidra, that goes from a 5-cost to a 2-cost Digimon. You're going to give it Blitz anyway. 9 times out of 10, you'll get to 0 because you'll go, like, start off your turn, Digivolve into your level 5, go to 0 memory, Digivolve into Megidra, go to 5, pop something, gain memory, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, go back to 0, rush, blitz into your opponent's stuff. If you don't, it instantly explode to their stuff. You need to pop yourself with Chaos. Chaos will then do its effects, blah, 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 and you get to play your stuff on the field. Funny thing is, this has interaction with every other things that gets deleted, whereas you can play things in an order. So you go on deletion, do that. I don't have a Takata currently to play. I will play a Searcher. Searcher says, no thank you, you didn't find a Takata, never mind. Or if you do find a Takata, yeah, Takata. It's pretty cool. I do like the package. I would love to see a purple Takata and see what they could do with it. Next, we're playing the, I suppose you call it the Beelzebub package now, which is we play 4 of the Rivals Barrage. You might not think this comes up. It comes up. You have a lot of purple cards in this deck, so these are active if they're in your hand. If you mill them, they're active to bring back your stuff, because most of your cards are purple outside of Crimson mode. You generally will get stuff back, especially if you need pieces. 9 times out of 10 in this deck, you don't need your megas, it's like your middles that you need. You need your 4s and your 5s. And because one of your level 4 says, hey, bring back a piece when you mill, you can get that Crimson mode back. It's not so bad. Great card. It does come up. You do destroy things, and you do get to bring things back. It's a fairly good deck. And then we just run 4 of the Death Slingers. Again, because you do have purple cards in this deck, and they're quite common. Essentially, the only purple cards that you don't have in this deck are 2 of your Gilmans, 1 Growlmon, and then Crimson mode. Everything else that isn't a Tamer is a purple-ish card. Yeah, I think you run like 30-something purple cards in this deck, so you do have access to like either using this or just milling it. And then 9 times out of 10, you will do a case of like, hey, I'll pop everything on the field. I gain like a couple of memory. And then sometimes it's a case of like, hey, I'll go into like my opponent's side. I don't get to destroy anything. Like, so we mill 5, and then you mill like 4 Death Slingers in a row, where you go like Death Slinger, like Crimson, Death Slinger, and then your opponent just looks at you like, what the hell? And it's like, yeah, I guess it only cost me 1 Digivolution point. Right, it's your turn. Pop on my stuff, and then it's your turn. And that's the deck, essentially. It's quite an aggressive deck in terms of what it wants to do. It's more annoying for opponents to deal with because we don't really have many decks that want to continuously mill your opponent out. And so having a deck that essentially 1 turn can go, okay, then mill 10. Most of your opponents are like, if I don't have stuff in my hand and I see all my pieces that I need to go to the bin, a Panic. Panic is a fantastic skill in this game. But yeah, MVP as per usual is Crimson. Crimson's just a goddamn beast, and yours will be. But yeah, so if you guys have been enjoying this, give yourself a trial. And I'm not going to lie to you, it's fun. It's really fun. Maybe not enjoyable, but it's definitely fun. So I'll see you guys soon for some BT13 stuff, because I don't think I'm going to do any more deck profiles. I think this is the only deck people actually care to see from me, because if you know who I am the guy that's been wanting to play Mildra for about a year now. So, we'll see you guys next time. Peace out and goodbye. Yes, I do wish these were Ultimate Cup ones, but we're not there just yet.